Do you think that we might have had an impact on the industry, Eddie? And maybe we are the reason why the architectural drawings are getting better in the industry right now?
I don't think that at all.
Okay, never mind.
I held the picture up and I said, it's this wall. And he cut it, came out, dropped down on the floor on the other side. And the guy came running up there and he said, not that one, not that one. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, this is the picture.
I remember you talking about you wanted to be a firefighter there for a while. Like, and I thought, like, wasn't you talked to a guy who had been in it?
Yeah, Ed Grizzle was his name, and he was a career guy in Gwinnett County.
He broke it down for you, and I think that was the thing.
DeKalb. He was in DeKalb.
Okay,
and I want to say, like, there's a swath of 285 that goes through DeKalb, so you see some stuff down there, and. Yeah, he pulled me off the side and he was like, you want to be a fireman? Huh? And I'm like, yeah, I want to be a fireman.
Jeez.
And then he broke it down for me and I was like, my 18-year-old self was like, maybe I don't want to be a fireman. Like, all the respect due. There's still a level of intrigue there, though. I love the thought of helping people in that way.
Oh, yeah.
In the moment of need.
No, for sure. I could not handle the physical... dismemberment and all of the other things that happen with that job,
the
right?
Physical side of it.
I could not handle that.
Oh, for sure. There's a physical side of it. Then there's the physical side of it on you because of the sleeplessness and the different things that you have to endure. So,
yeah. That's a next level job right there. We talk about how hard we have it in construction, but I don't think that really holds a candlestick. But Noah, dude, thanks for coming here, hanging out with us for a little bit. Why don't you just kind of introduce yourself? What do you do on your day-to-day?
Day-to-day?
Yeah.
So I'm a senior field engineer, what I'm doing now. Which
nice.
I was thinking about that. You got different kinds of field engineers, and I'm specifically the layout side, so not the paperwork field engineer, But senior field engineer, I'm kind of in charge of the department and everything. So I'm
very cool.
Building up. It's a newer company, and I'm trying to build up, start procedures, and only got a few guys working for me right now. So it's early stages. But
how long you been in it now?
Since 2016.
2016. Okay, all right, very cool, dude. That's awesome. So we got some common ground. Fellow homeschooler here. Yeah. Like this is that, like Eddie told me that after the pre-call you guys had, and I was like, yes, let's go. So like, what was your path coming into the trade, right? Did you just go headlong into it like I did, or what? I
messed around for a little while and thought I wanted to do something else. I was like, I'm still going to go and because what I ended up doing was the homeschool that I went through lost their accreditation somewhere in the middle of me going through. And so it was kind of like, my mom was like, okay, you got two options here. You can continue, and then bring a whole portfolio with you, and just say, hey, I did school, but you can't really prove it, Or you can go and get your GED. And so I was like, well, I'll go get my GED. Yeah. I still don't have my GED. So I got a job at 17 at Chick Fil A, and then was, I was like, man, this is good. I enjoyed it. And then I met a girl and we started talking and we were dating for a good long while. And my dad was like, are you going to get married working at Chick Fil A? And I was like, I've got a plan. I know what I'm doing.
I got this, Dad.
he said, well, why don't you just think about this? He said, there's a job, at work that maybe you should come and be, just try it out. And, well, he was a little firmer than that, but it's my dad. But that's how I ended up there. And I still was convinced, maybe a year or two, I'll do this, get enough money, get married, and then go into college or something like that. Yeah. Still never happened.
I'll figure something else out, right? Yeah, it's eerie, dude. That's the same way it was with me because like Dad just grabbed me by the ear and he's like, all right, come on, you gotta work. Yeah. And so and you gotta make money. And the rest is history. Yeah, same thing. I'm like, I'll go to college and I'll do that. Never happened. It's just you're just kind of struggling. This isn't that bad. This is pretty cool, I guess. We get to work on some pretty cool stuff, right?
Yeah. I didn't realize until I fell in love with it, how cool it was. You know? And it was like, at first I was like, man, this is intimidating.
Yeah.
You know, like I was looking around and saw people do, you know, look at these drawings and imagine. It's like they knew exactly what they were looking at before it was built.
Yeah.
And that's a skill, you know, that I had to learn. And so, I mean, like I was walking around thinking, man, how am I going to do this? You know, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
And then here I am years later and still doing it.
It just clicks at some point, right?
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah. Do you know when that switch hit for you? I think it was probably like around year 3 is when it started to kind of like, oh, okay. I think I kind of understand a little more now.
Probably so. Yeah. Same thing. I was, man, and after that point, you hit that, whenever that click is, that switch flips and you're like, I've got it figured out.
Yeah.
I know what they're talking about now.
Yeah.
And I would do something and then, you know, a few months later, I think, man, I was an idiot a month ago and I still didn't have it figured out, but now I do. Every time I'm like, I've got it figured out. So eventually I just stopped. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of making it up as I go, but you know, it's worked out pretty well.
Dude, that crap happens to me every day. I'm like, dang it, past Tyler. Why did you do that? Moron. Why? So you guys talked. You kind of set this whole conversation up. What are we talking about today, boys? What we got?
Well, I want to get into some of the project specifics because you've worked on a couple of cool ones, Hyundai being one. I want to throw Grey Wolf in there too.
It's a big name.
Yeah, it's just recognizable stuff. The kind of the process and pressure with Hyundai is one of the things. But like, what was the first job? Like, what's the path into surveying from there?
So from the beginning, I guess I started off working for a field engineer that had been doing it for a good long while. You know, he had things figured out. And, we called it field engineer helper, you know, and that's kind of just apprentice, but without, you know, all the, I guess you're not really an apprentice, but either way.
Yeah.
Field engineer helper, starting off basically just a labor.
Yeah.
And just carry this, you know, set this over there. The second or third day, he's like, just stand by that machine and don't let anybody touch it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's your whole job today.
Yeah.
And so I did it. And I think maybe a week or two into it, he left. Something happened on another project. He had to go somewhere. And he said, do you think you can turn this thing on and set it up and just lay out? It's like a couple embeds up on a pour that we had. It's like roof pour or something. And it's like, yeah, I can do that. And I sat down there and man, I was determined not to call him. I sat there punching buttons for like an hour. And I think the superintendent called him and he's like, this kid doesn't know what he's doing. But I eventually got through it and went up there and did what needed to be done. And, but after that, it was just project to project. My boss at the time told me, he said, I want you to work with everybody that you can, you know, get your basics and then see what everybody else does and pick and choose, you know, kind of their best way of doing things, best practice. Because to me, the thing you run into a lot with, especially construction surveying, you know, because it's not really, there's a few companies that have it down pat, you know, like this is the process, this is what you do. This is a class that will put you through, you know, but it's all in-house. There's no, you know, there's no real classroom environment for it. So, yeah. So it's just job to job experience.
On the job in every sense. So you end up landing, and I'm sure there's a lot of ground to cover in between that, and you end up landing on this Hyundai job. If you're in Georgia and you've been down to Savannah or like anywhere down on that coastal area, you've passed this Hyundai plant.
Right. Let me just put it this way, boys. My wife rarely pays attention to buildings.
Right.
But when we're on our way to like Hilton Head to go down for our family trip, she'll be like, yeah, where's the Hyundai plant? Like, it's nuts. Things like Disney World. It's crazy.
It's giant.
Freaking huge.
So you were on that project and you had mentioned like, okay, what was the environment like, crews like, how many people you trying to keep busy, like that kind of thing? Paint us a little picture here.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, it was a real wild experience because we already had the first project. So it split up into different contracts, you know, different parts of Hyundai. You know, they had this building that they're working on and then this building. We had 3 buildings, 2 separate contracts. And they had already started on the first building and were working their way around on it. They were still on the foundation, still pretty early. And they called me up and said, hey, you want to go down there? Get familiar with the area. Don't let anybody know that you're there right now. And and just, kind of get familiarize yourself, Right. So I showed up and I'm walking around and then the next conversation I had with one of the guys, and we joked about it just earlier. I talked to him earlier today, and he said, yeah, you might have to take a few guys and start digging over there, just you and a couple of guys. And then from that moment on, the pressure was on. It was like, got to get this done. We've got to go. We got to go. Yeah. And it's to nobody's fault. The timing was a little bit off for that one.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, no, it was go, go, go. And the level of productivity that we got through after they got me out of the way and got somebody that actually knew what they were doing leading the project, it went really well. So, but as far as just layout, I mean, I've been on projects where it was, you lay out a couple of things a day, and you're just kind of there, just kind of quality control, making sure they don't mess it up. Don't trust anybody pretty much, check yourself and check them too. And this project was, I'm doing something different every 10, 15 minutes. We're laying something out. And I took a guy, I had told them, I need somebody to help me. I can't do all this by myself, because the 2 buildings that I was doing was, I think they were 1.4 million square feet between the 2 of them. And so, and I had control points that were almost 3,000, 4,000 feet apart from each other, and so it's something that the equipment that I was using at the time, it couldn't, I couldn't sit on one and shoot the other. It didn't have that capability.
Oh, gosh.
And so I told everybody, I was like, look, I don't know if I can keep up. I need some help. I need some help. And so I had a new guy, but he didn't know anything. He's just a helper. And props to him, I threw him to the wolves within a couple of weeks because I had no choice. I'm like, this is how you run it. This is what you do. Just do this one thing every single day. Just go over here and lay this out. And all he was doing was laying out footings, which, he can get away with, if it's a little bit off, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
And hopefully the guys around him were smart enough to pick up on anything. And they were. It worked out really well. And but then I ended up getting another guy come down, and he was helping me because I had complained so much, I guess, at that point. I'm like, look, guys, I'm working till 7, 8 o'clock at night, and it's getting tough. I don't know. I don't have time to look behind me and make sure that what I did was right. I'm just going. And I think the thing that kind of blew a lid on it was I realized if I continued with the control I was using, that something happened somewhere along the line with the control points. And if I continued where I was going, the buildings were going to run into each other. And so I was like, it wasn't major, it wasn't to the point. I noticed it early enough that I could adjust, and move back and get it to work. And, but I called, and I was like, look, I got a problem. I need somebody to come down here and help me out for a little bit. It's just something I can't put my attention on because there's so many, I think we had 100 people, 100 carpenters, going at all times, building forms for the foundations. Foundations were all formed in place. There were walls along the edge. There were columns and all kinds of stuff out there, So there was always 5 or 6 crews going at the same time, and it was just a ping pong of me back and forth. I had a little buggy, and I'd throw everything in the back and go running off to the next thing. And I even had different tripods set up on different portions of the job, and I'd just run over there real quick, set up the robot, do my thing, lay out, and then pick it up and run to the other side. It's just as quick as I could. And it's real funny. We joked about it on and on. The moment the other guy finally was permanently there, we got shut down for it was a bad erosion control. Something wasn't right with the erosion control. And so we had actually dug a pit that was supposed to be, I think it was 18, 20 feet deep or something like that. And this place was bigger than most buildings that I had worked on, just these pits. And so these pits were filling with water because you're down, down towards Savannah, the water table's up pretty high. So the solution had been we were going to pump water using a dewatering system, which is, I'm just genius. I didn't know anything about it before I got down there. But, they drill holes every 10 feet, depending on how much water is out there, what the rate of flow is and all that stuff. Drill holes and then stick tubes down there and have major pumps going, pumping water all the time. So anywhere outside of that area had water in it, but in theory, our area didn't have any water. So, but with the erosion issue, it was getting off into 16, all the water running out and everything. And so we got shut down for, it was like 2 or 3 weeks.
That's Interstate 16.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It rained.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad. It rained that day and they were like, okay, let's not, because it was, like a lake out there. So
Golly,
it was awful.
So you got 100 people. You got 100 people counting on you to keep the layout going. Like, things aren't going anywhere. You're not placing forms or doing any work until you got your layout done. So they're like, you're not getting to it. They're just kind of hanging out. Right.
There was a lot of that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure, bro.
Yeah.
Slightly.
It was rough.
Yeah.
It was. And I mean, just, even just life happens. My son was a year old. My oldest son was a year old when I first started down there.
Yeah.
And, I'd already been down. So there was a supplier that was building a building up the road. Pretty much everything going on down there, suppliers to Hyundai and everything.
Yeah.
Massive places. That was the biggest job I'd ever been on before Hyundai. And that was a 90-acre site.
Yeah.
And my scale is broken, like when I go to other jobs now, so everything is small now.
Yeah.
And so, but at that time I'd left him as just a baby, traveling, and my wife was working, and, so it got tough. It got real hard. It was easier for the working 10, 12 hours a day in the fact that I didn't have as much time to think about it, but when you clock off or clock out and get back to the camper or the hotel room, wherever you're going, and then just sit there, it's kind of pretty rough on you.
Yeah.
So that was, I reached a breaking point somewhere in all that. And I was like, look, I got to get back home.
Yeah.
I can't keep doing this. So,
Jeez, man. Like that's an area that I feel like a lot of people that are strictly office-based work in the construction side, they don't quite understand like the travel component of what a lot of, I'll say, craft trades have to do.
Yeah.
And like, you got to go to the work. We were talking about like our dad before we even started up, when he was working with a concrete company, like he was gone for like a lot of the first couple years of my life, and not that I realized it, for the record. So take some grace in that. I don't remember it. All right. So, but I mean, hard on him, hard on mom, hard on it. Like, that's just an area I don't feel like people recognize. Like, you're being asked to do something that's very sacrificial in order for the greater good of this other, company or thing, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's, you talk about toxic work environments. You get down there and you're working all these hours and something happens to one of the guys, whether it's with their marriage or whatever.
Right.
And they're talking about it and you're like, man, I could see that happening to me if I don't slow down,
Mm-hmm.
And everybody gets in a bad mood, whereas you work close to home and you get to see your wife and family every day. It really does a lot for your mood.
These larger projects are pretty notorious for that too. I mean, they a lot of times the larger projects pay pretty good wages. Yeah. I mean, these mega projects they're paying top dollar to get people out there, make sure they're getting priority on the work. Mm-hmm. The project, I'll just say the project we were around a little bit that was larger, talking to a guy that was the erector out there, the week looked like, a 60, 65, 70-hour week. Time home was like whatever he could get between traveling home on Saturday and having to be back by Monday morning, right? So you got Sunday, but it wasn't like a full Sunday. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even full sleep that you were getting just to get that in. Mm-hmm. Rough way to make a good living though, which is the catch-22 of the whole thing.
Made a killing down there.
Yes.
I mean, between per diem and, I hadn't been hourly since I was a helper, but, if I was, then I've been doing good. No, they actually did, the company I was with there, they paid us, even though we were salary, they paid us for our Saturdays that we worked down there. So, which is good. Beyond what I can say for a lot of people. So
yeah.
So, it was nice.
So you had Great Wolf in there somewhere too. You mentioned that project. What's it like? I mean, those are just intriguing buildings. I've been inside of one. The indoor water park I get mixed reviews on that. I mean,
was it the layout? Was that the problem of it? Or
I think it's the eye scar.
Okay.
Like you can't unsee some of the things that you see in a Great Wolf Lodge inside the water park. I was just going to say that. But, comedy aside, the construction of the whole thing, if you just stay up in the rafters, it's really cool to look at everything. So, it might be a little defense mechanism. It might also be some intrigue in the construction. I'm just saying. But I digress.
Anyway.
As I do.
Anyway.
How do I get out of here? All right.
Yeah.
No, what part of that? I mean, obviously, so concrete crew again. Mm-hmm. So were you in the same kind of position? What's the work environment like? Kind of ratio of like you to the crew and who you're trying to keep busy there?
That was a fun one because that was actually the first job that I did as a full-fledged field engineer.
Nice.
So that was, my buddy asked me the other day, he said, he worded it differently. He said, when did you realize nobody was coming to help you? That's how he said it. Yeah. What we were talking about though is when did you, basically, when did you take on the responsibility? When did you realize you were responsible for what's happening out here? If something's wrong, it's going to be your fault.
Yeah.
And I told him Great Wolf Lodge is when I realized that because they told me beforehand, they're like, you're going down there. That's going to be you, and it had been going on for a little while. I actually dropped in. So the water park portion of it is tilt walls. It's just the best way to get that much square footage in that open of an area, that quickly. So we did that portion of it, tilt walls and everything, which is fun. I mean, that's interesting construction. It's a little bit different than, what you're used to with, normal buildings, elevated slabs and vertical and foundations. Foundations are still there, but it's nothing's vertical. You just stand that stuff up, pour it on the ground and stand it up. And so the layout can be pretty critical on that, to make sure all your connections meet up right. And, so the best ones give you some kind of cheat sheet, a guide or shop drawings, of how this is supposed to work. And so it worked out well. And I think the company I was with, they actually won an award for that one for being, I don't know if it was just how big it was or what exactly it was, because it was a large tilt wall project, So anyways, but I came in for that. Got sidetracked there. Came in for that and saw a little bit of that construction, then left, and then came back when we were in doing the pools and everything. And that's like throw everything out the window and just figure it out.
Probably a bunch of curves and all sorts of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like, I really had to learn how to use AutoCAD. Yeah. Because everything before that had been either somebody was around to help me to do it. They could work up, they could draw it up in AutoCAD and pick points on everything, and I'd have been okay.
Yeah.
But that job, it was just me. It's a responsibility. So I learned how to do all that stuff by myself, and I had something to work off of. Like I said, they had been working on it for a while, but things change constantly, especially on a job like that, and where it's the pools themselves I learned a lot about layout, and that it's not always the best thing to use the robot. It's not always the best thing to do that. You have to be adaptable. You got to be able to put a point here and swing a tape to get the radius if you need to. You can work all that out with the robot, but some of the old school stuff just works out really well too. So, you can't forget where you came from.
Yeah.
So, laying out curves, that lazy river is nothing but curves.
Right.
And that took me, I had nothing to do for like weeks. I'm sitting here just getting ready, lazy river's coming. I got to be ready for it, and we get to where we pour the slab, the bottom of that thing. And I go out there and it is like a week almost. It was 3 or 4 days, I think, that I was going every like 4 or 6 inches. Here's a mark. Here's a mark. Here's a mark. And, it was ridiculous because they had to build, you got to build the forms to follow the radius and everything. And those guys were insanely talented, but, they needed marks every 6 inches. And so it took me several days to do that. And it was tedious work.
Yeah.
So,
you care to venture a guess on how many points on that lazy river? Like, do you have any idea?
No.
Thousands and thousands, of course. Yeah, I figure. But that's crazy, dude. That's one of those areas that you don't really think about with layout, I guess. I mean, like coming from a detailing background where most of the time it's just like straight lines, like you don't. I don't know. I just forget about that element.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to think about what you have to go through. Like, what are you often like? I'm going to show my idiocy here a little bit, but like, what are you referencing back to most? Are you back to like architectural drawings, structural, like kind of comparing both of them?
Yeah.
What's that look like for you, like workflow wise, when you're laying something like that out?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's referencing everything that I can, that has anything to do with it. Within reason, of course. I early on, I realized that, you as the field engineer, you really have to figure out, you have to be the smartest guy there, and I'm not saying that I am. I try to be, but I'm not usually.
Yeah.
But you have to be the most well-versed in the drawings. You have to know what's going on more than anybody else. Because, how can you build it if you don't know where it's going?
Yeah.
And, that goes back to if the drawings aren't done correctly, then, I'm usually the guy that finds out, if there's something missing information. I look at myself as the last line of defense between, doing something wrong or getting an RFI in and just getting it fixed, So there's been a lot of, I had to get comfortable with asking questions, dumb questions, I thought, even though it wasn't me, it was just, hey, I don't know where this wall goes, and usually the direct is, the immediate answer is, what do you mean you don't know where that wall goes? It's right here. It's like, yeah, but where's the dimension for it? What's But if I usually stick with structural because we're doing concrete. And so I'll stay with the structural discipline as much as possible. And then if there's something in there, there's certain things you just know you need to look at the architectural. If there's, say like a multi-story building that's got a courtyard level, it'd be good to take a look at the landscape drawings because they might have something in there for, a weld plate that you might need somewhere on that roof, or that level. And it's just different things like that. So
how do you feel like drawings are doing right now? Do you feel like they're lackluster, or do you feel like they're fantastic? Everything's there. It's always right. I'm teeing you up here.
Setting you up.
I'm setting you up. Yeah, I'm setting you up.
I've seen some great ones, but there are few and in between. I don't know if it, and I can't speak a lot for the the back end of that. It's just when it gets to me, like I said, I'm looking for the mistakes. So it's really And I've been on jobs where you can't move at all because there's no information. Or somebody knows that information but forgot to tell somebody else. That's always the you get a lot of theories out in the field. When you're that far removed from the from the office, the people actually drawing it. And I always felt, like I said earlier, it's always stupid questions, but and I feel dumb asking the question, but like just the other day we were looking at a small staircase coming out of like a loading dock or something like that. And so we're looking at the staircase and the guy that I was working with, he told me, he said, hey, have you noticed there's a wall that's just kind of floating out in space over here? It doesn't connect to anything. there's a staircase and then there's a wall. There's a little, and I'm like, no, I hadn't, and that's what it is a lot of times. No, I hadn't paid attention, but he's like, what do we do? Do we extend the foundation? Do we, just pour it in part of the slab? What's the solution there? So it's just the little details. Yeah.
I wonder. I have an idea of maybe why that's there. Do you want to venture a guess? It's just like a leftover wall from something that was drawn in Revit.
Just a remnant of something. Yeah. It's
or the line work wasn't hidden.
You're discovering in the field a lot of times similar things that we're discovering when we're modeling it. And I remember going back to the drawing thing. I remember that day too, where I'm like listening to Dad complain. Dad never complains. He has a cherub-like demeanor. Never complains about drawings or architects and engineers. Nothing. So
he's always so happy.
But I say complains. Like
I'm gonna get in trouble
at that point, he was on to something that it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, how is it that he knows that the engineer didn't do something? Like the engineers are like smart. They're smart people.
Yeah,
Not a dad's smart too, but like how is it that he just knows that? And then you start doing the job and you start realizing, well, it's not Chinese long division. It either works or it doesn't. Yeah. And so at some point you run into something, you go, hey, I need that. And it's not there. Or you look at something and you go, that don't make any sense. And it's because it don't make any sense.
Yeah.
And you there's a time too in your career where you quit feeling bad about that. You almost quit second guessing yourself, and when you've run into something, you're like, no, that doesn't make sense. I do need to go ask them. It does kind of cut the corner off on the whole, should I RFI that? The agonizing over like, do I ask the question or not? But totally hear that, totally get that. It's just being that line of defense, finding the details. How many times? I mean, that's what detailers say.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of our drum that we keep beating. Actually, it's a dead horse that's now skeletal that we keep beating.
Yeah.
There's nothing left on the bone. Anyway, I know for me, there's always something. Shut up. There's always something that's like, why do we always miss this?
Yeah.
Every flipping job. Every job. Let's start preaching the stuff that will save you some time out there now. So what are the things that you feel like people miss a ton on drawings that you'd be like, oh my gosh, you can eliminate an RFI if you just do this, like 9 times out of 10.
That's a great question.
Or 5 times out of 10. I don't care.
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, the thing that we always slow down and look at is the elevator shops. Elevator shop drawings are the things that decide what size your elevator pit is.
Yeah.
And that's the decision maker. So we're not going to build the elevator pit until we have elevator shop drawings. And it's not going to be the same as the way that you had it drawn initially. Like it's not going to be the same size. The sump pit's not going to be in the same place. I don't care how many times you've done this. It's not going to be the same. So that's the one thing I guess would always be. I've gotten to the point now where I'm just not going to do it if you don't give me elevator shop drawings. So
interesting.
We're asking for those a lot too.
Interesting. Yeah.
We don't care about them for quite the same reasons. Now, pit size, absolutely. Like we are trying to figure out the size. Some pit orientation, we're probably just going to throw you some grading and some embeds and let somebody like you work that out. But
sorry,
the elevator rails, trying to figure out where they're actually going to be, and the hoist beam. Yeah, I mean, you get a representation on the drawings, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be like the manufacturer wants it.
Yeah,
right.
And they rule. So,
how do you feel about mechanical openings? Do you have to deal with that on like elevated slabs?
Bigger projects, and it's been a long time. I'm a little removed from it because I haven't done it in a long time. But I've done projects where. Yes. I did a job in Atlanta downtown. It was right across the street from the Fox Theater.
Yeah.
And so we had an elevator tower, elevator. What's the word that I usually use anyways? Tower going up. And there was a few openings in it. Every so many floors they wanted a mechanical opening for. I can't remember if it was ventilation or what it was specifically, but they didn't have drawings for it.
Yeah.
And it was just like, hey, we do need this. Just make sure you put it in there. And this floor, that floor. And then that would have been easy. Yeah. But then they were like, not that floor though, this one. And it kept changing, and then I got somebody down the line, handed me a picture and it said, put it in this wall. And the walls are already there. Yeah. At this point, we missed a few of them. And
shocker.
Yeah.
Shocker.
So I'm guiding instead of somebody else. Come to think of it now, instead of somebody else taking the guy that was actually going to be cutting it out, he handed me a picture of the wall and he said, hey, take your guy that's going to be cutting it out and show him it's right here, this far up. And somewhere in all the words that I don't necessarily look at, I've learned my lesson since then. But at that time, I wasn't paying attention. I was just picture. I'm a picture guy. Yes. You're going to show me. That's going to override everything. You tell me it goes right there. Okay, it goes right there.
Yeah.
And so I took him to that exact spot. I held the picture up and I said, it's this wall. And I was like, you're putting it right there, and measured it out for him and everything. And he cut it and he got it to where it came out and dropped down on the floor on the other side. And the guy come running up there and he said, not that one, not that one. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, this is the picture. And he goes, you're right. He said, but it's not that one.
Take the picture and flip it upside down.
It was like the landing below it or something like that, And so it's like, oh, man.
Jeez,
that's my main experience with openings and stuff.
That's always one I harp on. It's just like there's never coordination on it. It was like you just start the RFI process as soon as you get the job. It's like, look at that. It's a job. RFI number 1, mechanical opening locations. Please provide like every single time.
Yes, multi-rise buildings can get really confusing that way.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to make me sound like a complete dumb butt. But like if you got, 25 floor building.
Yeah.
And then you're going in and you're putting an operable partition in. And that operable partition goes on the 8th floor. And then you go into the structural drawings and you go, I'm going to go to the 8th floor and look at what structure is in the 8th floor. That's not where the operable partition's hanging from. You need to kind of like RCP that thing in your head and go to the ceiling plane. No, I'm the structure under the 9th floor. Yeah. It can get confusing on you.
Yeah,
pretty quick. And then you got to go verify what's actually there anyway.
Right. Yeah, and if the section's not there, then that doesn't help you either.
Yeah, that's right.
I've had some time to reflect.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to say edge of slab drawings. Some people do edge of slab drawings and some people don't.
Yeah.
And I'd rather always have them because I'm dealing with a project now where it's like nobody knows where slab ends. Nobody knows. And nobody can tell me. And, we're having a really hard time. And I don't know what's going on the architect's end, but we're having a really hard time getting answers. And I keep telling everybody, I'm like, you don't realize we're not going to be able to move forward if we don't know where it goes, So that's...
That's a difference between.
Like lately, I have seen more architects laying out an edge of slab plan, like a specific plan just for the edge of slab.
Do you think maybe that we might have had an impact on the industry, Eddie, and maybe that we are the reason why the architectural drawings are getting better in the industry right now?
I don't think that at all.
Okay, never mind.
Anyway. I think enough people have complained. Like yourself. Heck, it'd be really helpful.
And I know there's a lot more that goes into it than what I realize. Like I'm not going to look for everything. I don't know, if there's something holding that slab back so much, unless you tell me, I'm probably not going to look. And so it's just easier for me and you. Just tell me where it goes.
It depends on the facade. I mean, shoot, like whether it's a bypass condition on your stud or whether they're just going floor to floor on that thing. Like I've seen them change as a result of that. And then just on the whim of somebody just changing. They're like, yeah, we're going to move it back 2 inches. Because, like, why? Because we misrepresented it originally. Like, okay, sounds good. It's just, that one's a painful one. Yeah. For sure. Like,
we had that run of entertainment venues we did there for a while, and they VE'd studs down from 8 inches to 6 inches because you could, and it saved money.
Yeah.
And it was one of these like audibles that the design builder was calling, but the contractor was doing it. The light gauge guy was putting it in that everybody knew, but the designers weren't reflecting it. And the concrete guy never got the daggum memo, you know. So it was that slab edge would get set on an 8-inch stud, 2 inches too far out. And the stud guy, though he knew I'm using a 6-inch stud, did not know that the slab edge condition was going to look a little different now because it was 2 inches too far out. So what that would end up doing is in the event space of these places, there would be a 2-inch gap that got covered with brake metal on more than one project. And that's, I mean, it's just little stuff like that you don't think through, like, yeah, well, how's this going to land out? How's that interact with it? Yeah. But if you got the drawing, you good. I'd go your grids too. Just getting a grid that works.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't deal with it as much anymore. Some of the projects I've been on. And it also varies, you know, if you're doing multifamily, if you're doing, you know, high rise.
What's your experience with multifamily?
Not great.
Yeah, I haven't gotten good drawings of that.
Those are usually the worst. I mean, those are usually, I hate to say it, but those are usually the worst drawings that I get.
Have you done any car dealerships?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
I have not.
They've got a bad rep.
Oh,
really?
Yes.
Oh, buddy, wait for the circus. You give us a call whenever you get one of those.
I'll just stay away from them.
I found out.
I think the multifamily is like, it's almost quasi-residential.
Yeah.
And so you get a little of that in the design documentation. It's just different than if I'm building a hospital or some institutional thing. There's kind of a practice and a process for that. It's a lot more commercial.
Yeah.
Multifamily is not, it just is different. And a lot of times the construction's different in those. It's not like the steel elevated slab or, you know, cast in place or.
There's a lot more timber frame in multifamilies too. Like a lot more. Like, you see that often. Yeah. Like if they're not like, I'm going to say high end.
Well, you get the hybrid wall systems. You seen these?
Like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, where you've got like a hybrid wall. It might have some steel reinforcement in it, but it's got, you know, it's like prefabricated light gauge metal stud wall. And they're using that for support. There's one, Volcraft has a system that they work with that, where they've got joists that have maybe like shot studs. So it's like a light gauge wall system that supports bar joists that have concrete on top of them. And it's like this little hybrid system. It's pretty interesting.
I've seen a few different versions of that. Yeah. A couple companies have come down here to do a couple of different things like that. There was a building in downtown that we did. I've done a lot of work in downtown and midtown. But anyway, and Buckhead. But anyways, this building was so many floors of parking deck, garage, you know, below grade, and then podium slab, and then from there on up it was metal studs. And I mean, it went 12 or 13, well, probably not 13, but you know, 12 floors. And there was another one that we're actually doing in up close to Atlantic Station that was probably that exact same system that you're talking about. And our place and finish division is going out there and just doing place and finish on it. So it seems pretty cool. I asked a lot of questions. I had to go out there just to check some grades and stuff. And I was like, this is kind of neat. You know, I don't like it a lot because it takes me out of the system completely, you know, like except for place and finish, you know. But one of my favorite things to do is slab on deck, you know, elevated slabs. Yeah. It's so much fun.
How much? Okay, so I want to get into the digital side of things because I know you had to learn AutoCAD.
Yes.
And Great Wolf, right? Is it Grey Wolf? Great. Okay, great. I'm sorry. I've never been there. Anyway, I'm just not bougie like you, apparently. So on the digital side, are you guys getting models given to you at all? I'm
glad you asked that. Yeah.
Oh, yay. This is a good one.
Glad I asked. Hey.
I've seen it done. And when I've seen it done, it works really well. One company that I was working for is the only company that I've worked for until recently that I heard of them doing. They did their own concrete shop drawings. So they would do, you know, they would model the building themselves, all the concrete in the building. They had a BIM manager that worked for them full time. And it made the process 10 times easier. And I don't know if I don't know what's the holdup on a lot of concrete subcontractors. But ever since then, ever since I've seen that, and been part of that and how easy it made everything, I've been pushing it on everybody. I'm like, you got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this.
Why did it make it easier? Like what, from your angle, why did it help you? Because
for me, it completely took away the questions of where does this go? Because somebody's already asked that question. And, somebody's already figured out what it's dimensioned. So it's really just taking that responsibility and moving it to somebody else. But for me, being in the field, most of the mistakes we make is because I missed it or somebody else missed it. The superintendent missed it. And it's a little more cut and dry when you have your own concrete shop drawings, or, even if it's just somebody modeling the building. You don't have to go as far as to make shop drawings, but just model the building and look at it, and say, hey, we're going to have an issue here. We're going to have an issue there. Uh-huh. And he, a lot of times would get, he'd be part of the coordination meetings, and stuff. So I think it's a direction that we need to move in. And I've seen more general contractors push that, is that everybody agrees we got to go that way. So I've recently started learning how to use Revit because of that.
Yeah.
Now that I'm the guy in the chair making the decisions when it comes to the engineering team, I want them to have every resource available to them, So, and, I don't think we can go wrong if we just continue to use them, but just implement it in everything. If you're going to have it, then show it to everybody.
Yeah.
So.
You doing the layout points from the model at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another thing is, like you take most of the data collectors now that they sell have some sort of functionality that use models, whether it's the IFC or something, that's usually a possibility. Sometimes you have to pay extra. I'm not going to point no fingers at anybody, but some of them come straight out of the box, like the Trimble that I got. I will say that. I love it.
Yeah.
I've got one of those, and I played around. I had the trial for Revit. I was like, I'm just going to mess around and model this building. And I was amazed at how I'm not taking anything away from what y'all do, but how easy it was for me. I was used to doing, I've been doing some form of it, for the last 8 years, in AutoCAD. And so just the buttons moving to different places, it was easy for me to figure it out. So I had something put together. It wasn't perfect, but I had something put together in a day, and I put it in the data collector, and I was like, hey, how do you feel about this? Asking my guy, I was like, look at this, look what I did for you, And he's like, oh, that's pretty awesome. It's like, I don't have to wonder now, So, and I did tell him, I was like, look, don't trust me 100%. It's like, check me. But this will give you some kind of visual representation, because there's a lot of people, they don't have the imagination, or they don't have that skill yet built that I mentioned before. The visualizing, that's really, a buddy of mine, again, same guy, we talk a lot. He was telling me, he's like, I was explaining to him something like on a drawing or whatever. And he was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And he started to say something else. He said, no, you're going to think I'm crazy. And I said, no, what are you talking about? He said, I can see it in my head. He's like, I can see it. He's like, already I can see it being put together and everything. And I was like, you're not crazy. I was like, I do that too. I was like, I think a lot of people do. It's just something you have to learn how to do to be able to build this stuff. So, and anyway.
Yeah, BIM is studying for the test before it happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's your study time. Like if you get a chance to model it, dude, like you do this with estimating, right? Where he'll go through and he'll model it, or you'll go through, you'll start modeling it, you'll start finding some of the issues before you get out in the field, and it becomes a serious fire drill, and you've got 100 carpenters sitting there looking at you going like, hey, we got to move. Like at least you've got a plan together so you can go ahead down the road. Right. Like if anything, it's worth it for that. Like even if you don't necessarily go into the nth detail on it. Yeah. Nth degree. Like, okay, I can tell there's a rebuttal coming.
No, there's not. There's a reason.
Did I say something right?
You're kind of, we've talked around this a ton.
Yeah.
But when you model a thing, you're having to apply what's there, right? You're taking that in the field and applying it. And that's when it's going to break. When you apply the information is when it ends up showing its deficiency.
Yeah.
BIM allows you to apply it without being in the field while you're doing that.
Yeah.
And that is a better thing. Now, you might not, it might feel like I get a little bit of a brain holiday here because I'm not working quite as hard to make sure that I'm staying out of the woods on everything. Well, shouldn't that be the goal? Like we've already applied it, virtual prototype, we've applied. That's why I do the estimate.
Yeah.
Because I'm applying the drawings in a way that, I'm pretty decent in 2D. It's not like I can't look at it and kind of visualize it and have some sort of idea. Like that's about what it's going to take to do it. But when I go through and I put the grid in, I've applied the grid. That's probably where the grid bus is going to come out.
Yeah. And you compare
just
the
running a
architects.
calculator.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going through and compiling dimensions to make sure the overall adds up. And many times when I'm estimating, I'm not comparing the architecturals and structurals to make sure there's, 1/8-inch bust all the way throughout the thing.
It's even the same grid lines.
Yeah. It's amazing. I wonder if they meet sometimes before they design a building together or after or in some part of the process. But I mean, you're applying the information and all of a sudden the standard detail reveals its deficiency
itself.
to show you the full picture that, I've got a standard detail here and I've got a standard detail coming in transverse to that. Well, what happens when those two run together?
Right.
They don't consider one another.
Well, anchor rods, I mean, that's like fine. Like if you just start at the base level and say like, all right, I'm just going to model the grid, I'm going to model the anchors, and I'm going to model the footings and just see what happens there. Like you can pretty quickly tell like what kind of trouble you're in for down the road if you take that job. Like, and that's the reason like he does it is he'll model it out and be like, is this something that I really want to take on? Like, is this going to be one of those? So I can identify that early.
Okay.
Right.
So you're just talking about like building it up real quick before you said estimate. I was just kind of looking into that a little bit. So.
Yeah. I would recommend on all of your projects. Now, I mean, if there is no steel on the project, you can't do this, but on all of your projects, ask for the steel guy's model. Because tilt, for instance, we've done a lot of tilt. We've gone out and checked the layout of tilt. We've done the carpenter's books for tilt. We've done rebar layout and tilt. And that's probably because Dad's been doing tilt since like 1982 or whatever. But it's a familiar thing. We have that model. Like that model is sitting there. Somewhere. I would love nothing more than for you to know exactly where all of my anchors, like where I think they're going to go.
Yeah.
Where all my embeds are going to go. And they're there. Like, and you can
slab edge.
Put your layout points in there, extract that, and then use it for your layout. Yeah. So it's, to me, I mean, when I'm asked for a model, I'm like, heck yeah. Like by another trade, yes, here, please. Especially concrete. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, but the steel guys and the concrete guys sometimes get in a tug of war over who was right.
Yeah.
And since you guys get to be there, you become the fall guy a lot. And I've even been guilty of saying, somebody's going to screw it up. It's probably going to be a concrete guy, But y'all are there before us, right? So we get to Monday morning quarterback every anchor you've ever laid out. Right. I would love to just hand you the layout that I expect. And then have you feedback if it's different in some way than you expected.
Yes.
So that way we can coordinate before it's real steel and real concrete. And then we're really mad at each other.
I like this topic because it reminded me of a funny story. I will never, as long as I live, forget about this. I was doing a project, again, down towards Savannah, in Statesboro. And this whole time, like, I had just started back with this company, and I had a point to prove, and I was like, I'm going to do this right. And they trusted me to do this big job, and I'm like, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to really impress some people. I get out there, and like almost right off the bat, there was some issues with control and from the surveyor that had come out beforehand. And that, I mean, I didn't realize it until later, until I messed something up, basically is what happened. And so I had like 6 sets of anchor bolts that we poured, 6 different footings, and they were all like 1.5 inches off from the rest of them, off on their own little island, 1.5 inches off. So that I knew about it, it sat in the back of my head. But the story that I'm getting to is we had a meeting, they general contractor put together this meeting and invited me to it. Now, as the field engineer, I rarely ever get invited to these types of deals, or usually I can just say, I'm not going and nobody cares, So, but
that's wild. That's wild to me. Okay, all right, continue. Sorry.
We can get into that in a minute.
Let's get into that in a minute.
But anyways, I'm invited because they wanted to pin me on the wall about it. That's what it was. That was the reason, they had something to blame on me, and I had to fight for myself. So that's the headspace that I'm getting into is, I'm about to have to argue with these people about why I'm right or, how we can fix it or whatever. And I get there, and the superintendent over the project for the general contractor is there sitting at one table. And then there's a couple other people, field superintendents for them. And then the steel guys were on call, and they're sitting there and they're telling the general contractor, hey, these anchor bolts are screwed up, blah, blah, blah. They're messed up. And, this guy messed it up pretty much, pointing the finger at me. And the superintendent sits there and he's taking everything in, and he says, I'm not worried about it. He said, why are we even here? He said, why are we having this conversation? He said, I walked out there and looked at your base plates today. I could put my whole fist through it. He said, I'm not that worried about, if it's 1.5 inches off. He said, what's with those base plates? So,
jeez, man.
And they got real quiet after that. They're like, yeah, you're right.
Sorry.
That's awesome. I'm asking after the show what the fabricator's name was. I do not want that revealed right now.
Yeah, we won't do that. Okay, so you're not allowed to go to meetings? What? What the heck?
Well, I think it comes down to...
you know what I mean. Yeah.
It comes down to a couple of things, I think. The field engineer, usually you want to fly under the radar as much as possible. That ends up being your survival instinct, is nobody knows who I am, nobody knows what I'm doing. And most of the time that's true. You can get away with it and hopefully slide out the door before anybody notices if you mess something up. Now, to them, their biggest nightmare, if you're that type of person, your biggest nightmare is when finally somebody walks out and says, you, and starts asking you questions.
Yeah.
I decided after one job that I had, that just had nothing but problems. And I was the nameless guy that they kept pointing at, saying, this guy over here is messing up. I had an email come from somebody. I don't even know. That's part of it. I didn't know who they were. They didn't know who I was. Mm-hmm. And this was my 3rd or 4th day on the job. And somebody, I don't know who messed it up, but somebody oriented one of the columns wrong from one port to the next. And apparently, but that's the messed up thing, is it reoriented from one floor to the next. And that, maybe visuals, I don't know what the reasoning was. I'm sure there was a reason, but to me, it's just difficult, because this column it's going where it's going. And then, anyway, but somebody forgot to put the bars in for it. So specifically, they called out, your field engineer should have noticed this. And I was like, you don't even know who I am, man, and I don't know who you are. I was like, we don't have to have this conversation. But after that job, because there was a lot of issues like that where they just kept pointing the finger at us. They were looking for somebody to blame. So on that job with the anchor bolt problem, I came out and I met everybody and I was like, look, this is who I am. I was like, my thought process was, if you know who I am and you know what I'm doing, I'm going to be real upfront with you. If I have any problems, I'm going to let you know. If something happens and it's kind of a gray area, you're going to say, oh, Noah wouldn't do that. He wouldn't make that dumb mistake, So it's kind of, that became my defense mechanism. But anyways, that's part of the reason is most people end up trying to avoid the limelight, avoid the spotlight when it comes to that thing. So they don't want to go to that meeting. Me, I don't really care. The other side is nobody realizes how important field engineering is, really.
Yeah.
Until it's not there anymore. And I had that issue recently where both of my guys were out for good reasons, and it's nothing I could give them a hard time about because they had reasons to be gone. but we didn't get anything done as a company that day. We didn't get anything done because 2 guys laid out, and there's nobody. I mean, you can't compare that to anybody else. If 2 other guys, random people, laid out, it'd have been fine. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But the 2 layout guys aren't at work that day. Everything falls apart. So we've pinned so much responsibility on the field engineer doing his job and being there every day, and have no backup plan, pretty much. So
Golly.
it's
That's interesting.
I just got our title.
Yeah, no backup plan.
Layout can't lay out.
There you go. Yeah,
I like it.
That's a common theme. I mean, you end up, a guy that I worked under for a long time, I was his helper. We did a lot of stuff together, and he just retired maybe beginning of this year or something, and he taught me so much stuff. But something happened to him in the last couple of years that he was working. And he said, I don't have time to take off. He said, there's nobody coming to cover for me. There's nobody going to be here. If I can't make it to work, I have to schedule everything that I do around this project. And I was like, I can't just be the guy that shows up to work, and leaves. He's like, it's not possible. It's not even for a day. He was like, I'm done with this. He's like, I've got family, that we're all getting old now. He said, I've got grandkids and, all this stuff. And he was done with it. So he retired. And I see that happening, so many places where it's just like, you've got no backup. There's nobody coming to help you. So I ended up, for me, I always had to schedule things around, just the job schedule. You just look, are we pouring that day? If we're not, maybe I can go to the dentist, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
So it gets tough. And it's something me and my wife talk about a lot is, she'll ask me, she said, hey, can we go somewhere? You want to go somewhere for the weekend? And I was like, I just don't know. I can't tell you for sure. And I know, a lot of people have that, but you're talking about field engineers. There's a level of responsibility, I guess, where you reach that point where you can't just go, you can't, take off and run. I don't know that field engineers should be that person or I rephrase it. If you're putting that much responsibility on a field engineer, on one person, they should know that they have that much responsibility. And they should get some kind of, I'm not here fighting for more money or whatever, but something, because you get such wild differences. There's places that realize it, companies that realize, you're putting so much on this guy. He needs, they need something to back him up. They need paid off time and maybe a couple people that just stay in the company, not being dedicated to a job so they can go cover for them or whatever. And I don't know, I don't know what the solution is. I'm just saying maybe we should talk about it.
Right.
We should look for it.
That's good, man. That's good. Yeah.
That's real feedback right there for the people that, we've got a lot of people listening to the show that I feel like are holding the reins in some way that could positively impact the people that are working for them as field engineers. So I hope that goes out and just doesn't fall on deaf ears. I mean, and it really triggers the question, how easy or how difficult is it to find qualified help to do what you do?
Yeah.
Very difficult. It's very difficult. And I don't necessarily know the solution. I've thought about it a lot. I mean, there's different things you could do, but you're constantly hiring somebody that helped somebody lay something out one time, and they just don't know what they're doing. Think they do, or you're hiring somebody who's at that 3-year mark where they're like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I can do it all.
Dangerous.
And that's the dangerous zone. Yeah.
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 That's what you get a lot, because usually the people that have it figured out, they're where they want to be, and they're not going to move.
Yeah.
And so, I think the move that the industry has to make as a whole is stop looking for somebody that knows how to do it and teach somebody that knows how to teach somebody how to do it, I guess. And there's, like I said before, there's no classroom, there's no course or whatever on how to do building layout. There's nothing like that. And it's all work experience. And so I've been dealing with, I haven't hired anybody that knew what they were doing, with this company as far as surveying goes, field engineering goes. They're learning, they're learning as they go.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find a lot of people want to know how to do it, because my favorite saying is, I'm just the guy with the magic wand that comes out and tells you where it goes. And a lot of people are just inquisitive. They just want to know what it is and how it works.
Yeah.
So, I think we got to stop gatekeeping that, and let people learn if they want to, and that's my solution. Anyways.
Yeah. You're a testament to like coming into the industry, like bare bones, not really having much in the way of direction, like having a little bit of a direction, and then it taking you in this path of field engineering. And that shows like how you can almost, and I say this from experience, you can wander yourself into something pretty cool into the industry. But like, I almost wish that we could stop the wandering, you know what I mean? And and lay out the menu of options and be like, yeah, you want to be a field engineer, here's what that looks like. And you want to be a steel detailer, here's what that looks like. And
I think
we don't have it.
There's like a conception that, when you were a kid, you talk about construction. You don't think about, you don't think about everything that you could do, every career path you could have in construction.
Yeah.
You think about the guy with the hammer and the tape measure.
Yeah.
And that's, yes, that's the majority of the thing. And that's very important. Those guys are, back-breaking work, your entire life. That's insane. And part of me thought that's where I was going to be stuck forever, But you can make a killing doing that. And some people, that's just their thing. I've seen people that just love it, man. They love it. Rod busters too. Anything to do with rebar, man. Anyways, that's the hardest working. There's a Dirty Jobs episode.
Yeah.
Best episode I've ever seen. In my mind, where he's a rod buster building that bridge. Those are the hardest working guys on the planet. And I don't know what kind of, person has the mindset of, I'm going to get up every day and do this, But, I think it's an advertising thing, to people. Mm-hmm. It's a change in how we talk about it. Because I grew up my whole life, it was, don't do this. This is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love construction. I love what I do. It's been great. Now, it hasn't always been that way, but I'm hopefully over that hump now. There's kind of a mark, it's kind of a milestone really, where you realize it's like, I saw a funny video where it was first year in construction, you're like, I can do this, I'm getting paid a lot of money, I can do it. And then, from 2 to 9 years, you're like, this sucks. This is so bad. I need to find something else, And then after 10 years, it's like, it's just life, it's fine. It's going great.
Yeah, I got to the 10-year mark and I'm like, I'm doing video. I can't do this anymore.
Man, there was
out.
I sat there and thought, I thought hard about getting out and being an IT guy. Because that's just, I gravitate towards technology.
Yeah.
And I started doing some of the online courses and whatnot. And I was like, this is not for me. It's like, I can't let go of the outdoors, being out in the job, in the field, crazy stuff happens, and it would be too boring to me just to be inside all the time. Because I worked as an estimator for maybe a year and a half or so. Mm-hmm. And I did not like it. An office job, sitting there and doing, and I probably could have continued and made way more money than I make now. But it just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I really like having the option of, sure, there's things I got to do on the computer. And so I work from home most of the time. And I work on my computer. I can do everything I need to do there. And then, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock rolls around, I can go to the job site and check on how things are going and check on my guys and make sure that they're okay.
Yeah.
And so, Yeah, it's fun. I love it.
Well, dude, thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah.
I want to ask you the hardest question of all. Oh, sorry. It's our megaphone question. All right. So if we gave you a megaphone for the whole industry to hear in around 60 seconds, what would you want to say?
That is a tough one.
And 3, 2, 1, go.
I would say more directed towards the younger guys, like my age. I'm 27. And don't stop learning. Don't stop every single day. Find something that you can figure out, pick it apart and learn a different skill in the construction industry. That will take you a long ways. Just having a curious, inquisitive mind.
That's a good one, dude.
I like that.
It's a true homeschooler answer right there. That's it. My dude. All right. No, thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.